Here's what I know about productivity. The 8-hour workday wasn't made for me, and I don't like forcing my body to do things it wasn't meant to do. However, I still consider myself an achiever. I definitely like to get my work done with as minimal effort as possible. So here are some tips that I've compiled that have helped me personally embrace my strengths and have helped me work quite efficiently. In this video, I'm going to share 7 hacks I use to keep my to-do lists crossed off and keep reaching for that next milestone. If you're new here, I'm Carly. Beyond modeling, running a small business, and talking about financial literacy and consumerism on this channel, I particularly like living an easy life. I'm sharing that journey on this channel, so if you're interested, subscribe and ring that notification bell so you don't miss my videos. I'm going to be honest, ever since I accepted that 8 hours of working every day just wasn't for me, I have become very realistic about my productivity hours. I embrace a shorter workday rather than trying to drag my productivity into 8 hours simply because someone said so over 60 years ago. I've learned that in terms of creating, so writing, ideating, problem solving, I can realistically get in a solid 3 to 4 hours of productivity a day. And with those 3 to 4 hours, I try to pack in as much as I can to make myself feel good with whatever I've accomplished. So I will say a number of my tips revolve around disincentivizing myself from mindlessly using my phone, which I also made a whole video on how to cure your phone addiction, which you can check that out linked up here. So with all that said, the first thing I do to get myself productive is to put my phone on airplane mode. I've noticed that if I'm not careful, I self-interrupt by picking up my phone all the time. Sometimes it's from boredom, and when I'm in a lull in my work, I want to see if anyone has messaged me. Sometimes I self-interrupt when my phone buzzes, and it's often for a useless notification that frankly isn't worth the distraction. And when I self-interrupt, it often leads me into a 10 to 20 minute tangent. If I'm not careful, then that easily means I'm losing 1 to 2 hours a day on these random scrolling sessions. So when my phone is on airplane mode and out of sight, if I'm not seeing it and I'm not hearing it, then I'm also not thinking about it, which really helps me with an uninterrupted stretch of productivity. Airplane mode also really helps with curbing my habit of just picking up my phone and scrolling because I'm bored. Even if I start this habit by tapping into my phone, I'm stopped because 1, there are no notifications to look at. If there are no notifications, then I won't fall into my habit of scrolling. And 2, having to complete an extra step of turning off airplane mode before I scroll is a reminder of why I put airplane mode on in the first place. And that does wonders in helping me stop where I get stuck into the vortex of scrolling. When I do have to use my phone in ways that make me more productive, like using the voice to text functionality, I will put my phone on grayscale mode and toggle on do not disturb. That way I'm not interrupted with different notifications that lead to tangents, and the grayscale just makes my phone less interesting. I have found that when I am alone in my apartment or my room, sometimes I get bored by constantly working in the same location. And furthermore, if I'm fully alone, I find that I'm more tempted to scroll on my phone with abandon. So because of that, I like to change up my environment. Some days I'll work from my home with no issues, but when I do need a change, I often go to the library or I'll work from a coffee shop. I remember in New York, one of my favorite places used to be the Natural History Museum library. And during my work breaks, I would go look at the dinosaur bones. Walking among fossils that represents vast expanses of time and seeing skeletons of different creatures that were alive millions of years ago would just put my work and my concerns into perspective for me. And it really made me take my work a lot less seriously, which was just such a good reminder. But I think for me in general, working from a different space is just a reminder that I took the effort and energy to put myself in this space, so that means I need to start working. I have found that I am more likely to self-interrupt if I'm doing something that is hard or has a lot of ambiguity. It just takes more activation energy for me to get going. And so for example, if I'm responding to an email and I just don't know what to say, sometimes I catch myself doing the easier thing and procrastinating on it rather than putting in the energy to figure it out and just get it done. So when I catch myself doing the easier thing and putting it off, I take inspiration from the Pomodoro method. If you're unfamiliar, the Pomodoro method is a Japanese time management technique where you work for 25 minutes, then you take a 5-minute break, and after 4 of these sets, you take a longer break. And I think you just keep going until you're done with your work or for the day, I'm not sure. When it's really hard for me to concentrate and I'm just really dragging my feet on something that I need to get done, here's what I will do, inspired by the Pomodoro method. I set my timer for 25 minutes. I know I can do anything for 25 minutes, and the expectation I give myself is I will work for 25 minutes with no distractions, and when I'm done With that 25 minutes, I give myself permission to take a long break or even be done for the day. And here's where I'm coming at it from. I'd rather get 25 minutes of solid work done instead of 2 hours of half-assed work, which I will feel guilty about anyway because I'm not even fully focused during those 2 hours. Often I find that starting the task is the hardest part. And once I've gotten into the groove of something, I am fueled and motivated by my progress. And I often continue very easily. A 25-minute timer might turn into an hour or even 2 hours of seamless work simply because I am already in the flow state and I really don't mind continuing the work. The biggest mindset shift for me is that permission to stop working when the timer's up. In reality, I love getting into the flow state where I am in deep concentration. So if I reach that point, I'd rather keep working than stop. In fact, once I get into the flow, I don't really want to take my 5 minutes of rest. I find that's quite disrupting for me because I have to get into the flow state all over again every 30 minutes. So that's why it's the loose Pomodoro method for me. The next hack I have is to go analog. Keep a notebook, read a physical book, pick up physical things. Ever since I started keeping a notebook, I have discovered I get less distracted. I have a whole notebook ecosystem, which I'm completely obsessed with. And ever since I started keeping a notebook, I have noticed that I get less distracted. I have a notebook for creative writing. I have a notebook to jot down any epiphanies, lists, or questions that randomly come up for myself throughout the day. And then I Google all of the non-urgent questions I wrote down that way all at once. That way I don't get distracted and interrupt my workflow to search them up every time a random question pops up. And not to mention, I just love the notebook ecosystem I have. Once I jot down a small note, I just want to keep writing in it because I love the way I set it up. So yeah, if you're interested in a walkthrough of that, feel free to drop a comment below and I'll make a video. And also, if I'm taking a break, sometimes I'll just read a couple of pages in my book or look over the notes I've taken. And in doing so, I get to squeeze in some reading time and it's less addicting than scrolling on my phone. So it's just easier for me to get back to work. I cannot function well if I'm not well rested. It just makes my life so much harder and I don't want to operate that way. So to make sure I have a good day, I try to get to bed at the right time every single night. One thing that helps me get to bed on time is getting ready for bed like 2 hours before my actual bedtime. And that way I'm in my comfy clothes. I don't have to rush my routine right before bedtime. And it just makes my life so much easier. I understand sleep as a super tool to help me succeed. It helps with immune functions, with infection and inflammation. It helps with my mental health and emotional regulation. I just hate being sleep deprived. I know that if I start my day wishing I had more sleep, that's already starting the day on the wrong foot for me. And maybe I don't notice it consciously, but I believe being well rested makes me more creative. I also learned that I can't catch up on sleep as simply as sleeping extra the next day. Science shows that several days of losing 1 to 2 hours of sleep can affect our ability to function as if we haven't slept for a whole day or even 2 days. So I realized if I want to perform my best, sleep is something that I absolutely have to prioritize. I've learned that sometimes 8 hours of sleep isn't always enough for me. Some days I need more. Rarely, I might need less. I've also learned that if I do certain activities like lifting, I need roughly an extra hour of sleep to recover the next day. So I'm always calibrating my schedule to get enough sleep, and that's how I ensure that I can start my days well. On top of getting adequate sleep, when I really need to get my stuff done, capital D-O-N-E, I wake up early. Usually around 5:30 a.m. I do this because it's not particularly pleasant for me. If I'm awake at that absurd hour, there's no other reason for me to be awake but to do what I need to get done. It motivates me to knock things off my to-do list. Otherwise, why would I put myself through the discomfort of waking up at 5:30 a.m.? While I don't love it, realistically, I kind of like it because on the days I wake up early, I feel very accomplished at having done so much by mid-morning. And this kind of goes back to my sleep point. I can't wake up early and have a good day unless I have slept well the night before. So in preparation for those 5:30 a.m. early mornings, I generally will do lights out at 9:45 p.m. the night before, which might sound really extreme, but that's what works for me. While I do practice all of these practical productivity hacks, the biggest one that makes the most difference for me is that I just give myself a lot of grace. If I'm having a hard time concentrating or a hard time starting to work, I take that as a hint that my body is telling me it can't handle it today. I know I'm trying my hardest because I always try my hardest and it's just not going to happen that day. If that's the case, I just let myself do something that doesn't require a lot of brain power, like write in my journal or read, or I'll go on a walk or a hike. Sometimes this means that I end up giving myself an unplanned number of days in a row to relax. And that's where I'm not working or thinking about working. I think a previous version of me would feel very stressed out about resting so much. And maybe I'm still working on that a little bit. But I've come to trust that this time off will help me be more productive when I do go back to work. And I've noticed that after these mini breaks, I often find myself thinking about all of the ideas I want to execute. I much prefer this mode of work to forcing myself to sit down regardless of whether or not I physically and mentally want to. And I get that I can do this because I am an entrepreneur, so I'm working on my own schedule. Setting my own schedule is also one of the variety of reasons why I had quit my corporate job and went down on my own path. I want to be energized by what I do and what I put my effort into. And in order to keep that sustainable for me, I take my rest when I need to, and conversely, when inspiration strikes, I just keep fleshing out the idea until the flame dies out and I'm ready to shut my computer. So those were all of my tips around how I execute gentle productivity. Let me know which of my practices you resonated most with. And if you like this video, allow me to suggest this video where I talk about how quitting consumerism gave me the confidence to quit my corporate job.